Hello and welcome back. I'm Carly from Soundsight Studios in Austin, Texas. And today I want to share my top 3 tips to helping you do the best New Year's reading possible for yourself. Whether you just got a new tarot deck or you happen to have one lying around, I want to help you give yourself a New Year's reading that is meaningful and supportive. These 3 tips can be applied to any reading you do in the future. So let's dive in and learn together. Tip number 1, we want to ask great questions. You can find these online or you can create them yourselves. Here's what you want to focus on. Do not ask a yes or a no question. Those can be really shallow and they're not very helpful. Hearing a yes or no it's hard to interpret honestly from the tarot cards, but it also doesn't give you very much. It can create a sense of frustration because you can't do anything to help something work out or not. You're kind of living in a sense of suspense once you get that answer. And it's important to remember, tarot does not give us answers. Instead, tarot cards are a tool to help excavate some understandings from within yourself. The tarot cards themselves are just ink on paper. It's going to be your own mind that does the work, and it's going to be your actions in the world that make an impact on your future. So make sure that you're avoiding yes or no questions. Another really important factor here is we want you to choose topics over which you have power. For instance, I'm not going to have power over the economy next year. I can't have power over if somebody hires me for a job. I won't have power over how my boyfriend responds to me next week when I bring up a tough conversation. However, I can think about how I'm investing my money. I can prepare for an interview to increase my chances of getting a good job. And I can make space for any reaction that my partner might have by being mindful of my tone and thinking ahead about how I want to start that conversation. So, make sure that you're choosing topics you have power over. That way you're operating within your sphere of influence and you can do things that are making an impact in the results of your action. Lastly, when it comes to asking the right questions, be mindful of your phrasing and your word choice. Take out words like when, where, who, will. These all create predictive questions, and it's trying to draw an answer from those paper cards. And the fact is, it's not going to be very helpful. Rather, I recommend you ask questions starting with the words how, what if, could. These will lead to more open-ended questions, and this allows your subconscious mind to come into action, and it helps you identify what your feelings are, what your instincts are telling you, what your inclinations are for what you want to do next, or even what are some of your fears, your obstacles. By bringing that to the surface, you can find ways to problem solve through them. So, quick review for you. We want to make sure that we're asking the right questions. Make sure that they're not a yes or no question. Choose topics over which you have power, and be mindful of your word choice. Great examples of a New Year's reading question could be, what lesson did I learn last year? What lesson could I learn next year? Which skills do I need to invest in for my long-term success? What type of people would I benefit from surrounding myself with this year? What habit am I ready to change, release, embrace? Work with some of those ideas as you lay out your cards and create your questions for your New Year's spread. Tip number 2, maybe the most important tip. Interpreting the image. The thing is that tarot is a visual medium. That's why it can access your subconscious mind. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And sometimes it's really hard to put an emotion into a word, but you can recognize the feeling visually. So because tarot is a visual medium, let's talk about how to interpret those images. First and foremost, when you turn over a card, register your initial feeling tone. This is the most important part of your interpretation process. This is going to be your gut instinct, your gut reaction, the subconscious response. what you feel and think about that card in the first 3 seconds is some of the most valuable information you're going to get. Feeling tone is a vague word intentionally, because maybe it's something as broad as you feel repulsed by the card. Maybe you feel engaged and excited about what you see. Maybe you're shocked. Maybe you feel, Maybe you feel, huh? Maybe you feel cold, warm. Whatever you feel, that's great. That's your feeling tone. Register that response. It doesn't have to go into words, but we need you to recognize what was that initial reaction. Then your conscious mind will kick in and look at the exact details in the card. What gave you that feeling? Is it the body language of the character? The colors in the card? Is it the subject matter? Was it a word you saw or a number that you associated meaning with? Find out what gave you that feeling and where did that association come from. Third step here is that you always want to go to a book or a resource that can give you a traditional meaning of the card. Or if you're working with a more modern style tarot deck or an oracle deck, jump into the book and find out what did the author and artist want you to know about that card when they created it. Because maybe they have their own quilt of meanings and this has a specific interpretation that's unlike what you're used to or unlike what you've heard before. And this can add so much depth and meaning, and it's a little bit of a gift, honestly, when you're doing an interpretation. Finally, you want to put those 3 things together. What was it that you initially felt? What gave you that feeling? And what did the creator want you to know about the card? That's going to be your meaning. Now, as you practice this, I really want to remind you to always trust that gut instinct. That's what keeps tarot fresh and fun. That's why this deck of 78 cards, which surely has evolved over the last 300 years, that's why we haven't had to change the deck dramatically. Because when you trust that gut instinct, you're never looking at the same card twice. You're always in a different area of your life, looking at the cards through a slightly different perspective with a different mindset. And so that gut reaction is what helps your readings feel authentic in the moment. What I just shared with you is a visual interpretation technique, and it's my absolute favorite way to read a card. That's why I also don't read in reverse when I'm doing something like a New Year's reading. If I really want guidance from the tarot cards, I want to be able to look upright at an image. Other readers will feel differently, and there are other styles of reading tarot. But if you use that little technique I just shared with you, turn your cards so they're upright every time, and that's going to help this technique really be effective and help you have great readings from here on out. Tip number 3 is finding your so what. You've done all this great work creating a good question, providing a strong interpretation of the image, and now it's up to you to decide, what do you do about it? How do you make this count for you this year? Give yourself some time to process the information you got. You can do this alone individually, or you can do this with other people. If you're doing these readings around friends or loved ones, invite their feedback. Let them share some ideas with you and brainstorm what you could do to make the things you learned in the tarot cards come into manifestation. There's always 2 parts to a problem-solving practice. The first is to invite these ideas, consider all possibilities, all paths. And that's when we want to make sure we're being open-minded, inviting, and creative. The second part of the process is to be critical. So once you've received all these ideas and you've thought things through, start asking, what's most possible for me? What do I want to do this year? How much risk am I willing to take? What are my resources that could help me? What challenges am I willing to go up against? That's when you can start to narrow down your how. So we know what you want to learn, we know what skills you want to build, we know what you want to take with you from last year. Now we understand, how are you going to do that? What small steps can be taken regularly to help you have that bigger impact and meet that goal by the end of this year? I've heard many people call tarot creative problem solving, and it's because of this final step that we get that feeling from a great tarot card reading. I always like to imagine tarot cards as doors that can open up new ways of thinking. And so this is your time to see where those paths are taking you. A really great technique here is to write. That way, you're not going to loop backwards. When you're writing down your thoughts, you're able to follow a clear train of thought, and then when you make a decision, you can reference back to it later. So it can kind of mark a milestone for you at the beginning of the year when you write down, what did you take away from this card or from this reading? 6 months later, 12 months later, you can look back and ask, how well did I do at achieving this or at manifesting this? So I really recommend letting writing be a part of the process at this point. Don't get in the weeds about writing down all the details about the card, because it's not so important what the card is or what the card says. What matters is, what did the card mean to you, and what are you going to do about it now? So that's my third and final tip for you. Make sure you give yourself time to process and identify the so what of your card. Take away a beneficial meaning to you and think about how you can bring this idea into your life with actionable steps. There you have it. Those are my top 3 tips for getting the most out of a New Year's reading. For a quick recap, remember to ask great questions. Make sure you're visually interpreting your cards and trusting your gut instincts when you first see a card. And lastly, give yourself time to process your reading. Write down some actionable steps that can help you move forward. And make sure that you're inviting feedback from other people if you're feeling stuck with what a card means. I hope those 3 tips help you enjoy a New Year's reading for yourself and make the most of your readings for the rest of the year. If you want a little extra support, reach out to me. I'm available for one-on-one lessons. If you're in Austin, I teach in-person classes and I'd love to work with you. And of course, I'm always available virtually or in person for tarot card readings. I can help you practice using this technique, and we can use it in your life to help you build a life you love. Thank you for joining me. Please make sure to like and follow. Hit me up on these socials to stay in touch, and I'll see you next time. Happy reading.